Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go, here we go.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 5 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. My name's Kyle Sutherland alongside the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. I want to welcome all of you in. Got a lot of surprises from last week that we are going to talk about, and some of the headlines, of course, that we got from last week. I got to see one of the games of the year on Monday. That'll be one of the first things that we do talk about. But Jared, another good week. We're 2 weeks into the Natural State Sports partnership, and everything has gone great. We have got a couple of new sponsors, and I will talk about those on the show. We'll talk about one of them here in just a second, but a lot of exciting times. Here we are 2 weeks in as we wind down the season here, and got district tournament starting this week, so postseason play starts for the small schools.
Definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with the district tournaments this week. A lot of make or breaks that are going to be going on for this week, and excited about the partnerships that we've gotten finalized this week, and excited about a couple of other potential partnerships. And I think it's just going to give us the ability to grow what we're doing and continue to just promote players all across the state.
Before we get going, I want to remind everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and also hit that notification button so that way you are notified when we release a new episode. Of course, that's at the beginning of every week. And also you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast on the audio versions, and you can check it out there. So wherever you listen to your podcast, we are there. Make sure you subscribe. But before we get going here on the softball talk, the reason why you are all here, I want to talk to you about our new friends, our new friends, because I know you may have known Jeremy for a little while, Jeremy Rice there at Athletic Field Services of Arkansas. I actually grew up in the same, he's a good bit older than me, not to age him here, but we both grew up in the same town, so I didn't meet him until the other day. But Jeremy Rice at Athletic Field Services of Arkansas, we are so happy to partner up with them. A properly graded infield is not only important for player safety, but also the field's health, and no company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation. And check them out on Facebook or see what else they have to offer by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas online. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. Let's hop right into it. Class 6A, I want to start off by congratulating the man, Chris Cope, one of the most intense, as I put on Twitter, one of the most intense competitors that I've seen, but also just one of the nicest guys in the game. Love Coach Cope. He got his 400th win in Cabot's 7-1 win over Conway. I believe that was on Friday night. Was either thinking Thursday or Friday, but I'm pretty sure it was Friday. But, Jared, I want to talk about those Cabot Lady Panthers for a second. We've talked about them a good bit throughout the year, but we haven't really gone into a whole lot of detail. And I think that they're kind of that forgotten team post-COVID in Class 6A because they won it in 2019, had a really good chance to repeat in 2020. A lot of good players came back, and they were just another really good squad that, again, had a chance to go back-to-back. But after that, it was Bentonville. And then last year it was Bryant. So Bryant and Cabot, they've been right there in the 6A Central that have been battling it out for a long time. But you look at Sarah Camplain, who I believe is National Park College. I almost said North Park. National Park College signee. And then also another couple big bats, Peyton Nicholson and Emily Titus. And then the big question coming in this year, who was going to replace A.K. Bernard? Which, by the way, happy birthday. As we're recording, it is her birthday. But Addison Cooper, Ainsley Justice, both have combined for a 17-8 record. So I'm sorry, 17-4. I'm looking at my numbers wrong here. I'm timesing it by 2. But both have done a really good job in the circle. We knew that it was going to be a collective effort there with the graduation of A.K. Bernard, but Cabot Lady Panthers been one of those consistent teams along with the Bentonvilles and also, of course, the Bryants as of late. Just continue to roll along and definitely want to congratulate Coach Cope on his 400th win.
That's a huge accomplishment with 400 career wins. Nothing but can be said about that. It's just that's an amazing feat. Definitely congratulations. Talking about their pitching, because I'm fairly familiar with Ainsley Justice and Addison Cooper. I've been on the wrong end of their pitching a few times in travel ball, so they're pretty talented for sure. Both of them have really good movement pitches. Both of them have better than average velocity, and they're just smart pitchers. They know where to locate the ball. They know what to do with it, and they've had at Cabot, they've had strong pitching, strong catching. They've had, the bats have been there, for them this year. They're one of those teams that I told you early on they're going to be in that top 4 or so, and they've kind of proved out that they're right there. Of course, we just keep trying to figure out who's going to do anything with Bryant, and so far the answer is no one. So, but I wouldn't put it past Cabot or Bentonville to be able to squeeze something out against Bryant. But right now, Bryant's looking really strong.
Yeah, Bryant, we'll talk about that game that they had with Sheridan here in just a second. We'll worry about that when we get into 5A because I want to make sure that I give that their due. But like you said, Ainsley Justice and then also Addison Cooper with what they've been able to do. That's a lot of big shoes to, even though they had that's 4 shoes that had to fill 2 basically with A.K. Bernard. That is a lot to do. You knew that they were going to have some big bats. They always do. Again, when you had Sarah coming back, and then also Emily, Peyton Nicholson, and then there's also a couple more than there that you could name. Those are the ones that I'm thinking of that are batting in the 400 or 500 range.
Addison Fulbright, I think, too.
That's right. Yeah, I think she's batting close to 400, over 350, something like that. And that's the thing. There's quite a few that's batting over 350 that I had noticed. So just another year, and that's the thing. We always talk about, as much as I harp on strength of schedule, and they've had strength of schedule with especially how far they've gone in the state tournament, and they've had consistency. So those are the 2 things that we preach on all the time, consistency and strength of schedule.
You got to watch out for all the Addisons over there. Addison McMillan, Addison Fulbright, Addison Cooper. So there's a lot of Addisons that play softball. A lot of talent over there for sure.
And also, too, just talked about Bentonville. I want to give a couple of shout-outs to their youngsters. We've mentioned that between sophomores and freshmen, they've got 7 that they started. Now, that was at the beginning of the year. That might have changed. I had talked to Coach Early about that about mid-March, so some things might have changed. But I did also text a little bit with Coach Early. I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday, and wanted to shout out 2 freshmen. Now, you know how it gets, Jared, when I try to pronounce names that might confuse me a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead. So Kylie Wyman, I know I'll get that one right, and Alexis, I'm going to say Laringe. That's going to be my first attempt at it, but those are 2 freshmen right there that have been really excelling for. You think about it, not just being a freshman and starting and being a heavy contributor on a team that has the kind of expectations that Bentonville does every single year, but doing it in the 6A West, you just got to really tip your hat to Coach Early and his staff, and then the way that these girls have bought in. But as we talked about with Cabot, Bentonville, just another dynasty that really, other than what Bryant, when they ended that run that they had last year, post-COVID, other than 2023, I mean, they have been the best team really ever since we've gotten past the COVID stages.
Yeah, Bentonville and Benton, for a couple, 2 or 3 years have looked extremely strong and have been the dynasties, have been the programs with the really high expectations to win state on a regular basis. Bryant, has jumped into that conversation now, but definitely for Bentonville to be playing as well as they're playing with what they've had to replace and with the youth that they have, that's definitely a great coaching job this year. And I'm going to be a little excited to see what Bentonville has the next couple of years because they're so young right now. They're going to be really strong the next couple of years as those freshmen and sophomores grow up to be juniors and seniors.
That's right. And, you're going to have to replace great players like Amber Turner and also Ryan Sanders, who are going to go play Division I softball. But I think you're probably in a much better spot than last year when you graduated 8 seniors that all signed with colleges than having to replace 2. So they are definitely in a good spot. You got about 7 or 8 freshmen and sophomores that have played consistently and played consistently well at that. So Bentonville, as we expected, they've really begun to heat up after a 1-2 start, but also, too, staying in that West Conference. How about the week Fort Smith Northside had? They beat Fayetteville. They went, I think it was 3-1 on the week, but they've won 3 of their past 4 games. Last year got Harbor and also Gentry, that's a 6A over a 4. But you think about Gentry's a heavy 4A contender the way that they've played. So I don't know that it's really about can Northside keep that up, but as the playoffs get closer, they're going to really squeeze in for that 5-6 spot. It's probably going to be that 6 spot that Northside's going to get. But how about those Lady Bears? Haven't had much to say about them this year. They've struggled, but coming off a big, big week.
Well, they've definitely turned it on here this last, 4 to 6 game run. They've really looked a lot stronger. Kind of turned the corner, it seems like. And I haven't had a chance to do the research on it. I don't know how much of that is just hitting the ball that much better, or if their pitching's improving. I haven't had a chance to really look into the details of what's going on, but just looking at their schedule and what they're doing, they've definitely had a good run out of the last 5-6 games and looking stronger coming down this stretch. So we'll see what they're able to do this week moving in Georgia State. And like you said, I think they're going to be in that 5-6 spot for state tournament. So be interesting to see.
Yep, got 2 more weeks to continue proving themselves before postseason play begins, at least for the big schools. But staying in the big schools, down in Class 5A, the one that I know many wanted to hear about. I know that I was upset that I had to wait basically an entire week to talk about it. But the premier matchups of the year, one of them, Bryant versus Sheridan, that happened at Lady Hornet Field last Monday. I was fortunate enough to be able to cover this one for the Democrat Gazette, and, man, I was glad that I was in person for it because it looked like at first that Sheridan was just going to run away with it. I mean, they jumped right on literally from the jump. I mean, Skylar Starrett was the leadoff batter. She got on base, and then things just pretty much just fell downhill from there, at least in the first inning for Bryant, and everything went right for Sheridan. Well, Bryant chipped away. They put up 3 runs in the 4th inning, got another one, or Sheridan got another run at the top of the 6th, the bottom of the 6th. It was all Lady Hornets from there. On 4 consecutive at-bats, they got at least a run, and then they ended up winning 8-6. But, Jared, I think this is just another example. First of all, I agree with what Coach Hotman said, that these are possibly, and I keep saying, with respect to Rogers, with respect to Bentonville, maybe a couple of others, these were arguably the 2 best teams in the state that were on the field at Lady Hornet Field on Monday night. And I tell you, I know that Sheridan lost to Bauxite later in the week. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, but I think that game in particular, I'm not going to say that Sheridan was beat by Bryant twice, but I think the emotions of the game might have carried into that one just because I wasn't even a coach. I wasn't even a player, but that was one of those that on Tuesday, and I think I told you this on Tuesday, I'm still amped up from it. It was such an emotional game, and it was up. I would say, along with maybe Farmington and Harbor, that was probably one of the top 2 games that I've seen in person this season. But definitely lived up to the hype. Certainly, if not the 2 best teams, certainly 2 top 5 teams overall. There's no question about it.
Well, when you just look at the raw talent, taking that game out of it for a minute, but just looking at the raw talent for those 2, Bryant's loaded from top to bottom. They've got great pitching, great hitting, just able to do everything. But you look over at Sheridan and you look at all of the just athleticism and the big bats and everything that they bring to the table. You knew this was going to be a heavyweight, from top to bottom. And when you take two teams that are that talented and that ready to go and fired up, and the whole week's built up about it, and 3-4 days, that's all you can think about, and then you lay it all on the field. I mean, it's hard to recover from that, in the aftermath. And we've had games like that in travel ball and in high school ball both, that the kids just put everything they have into a ball game. And sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 days before they can really truly reset to be able to go forward. And not taking anything away from Bauxite beating Sheridan, because Bauxite's a great team. And from everything I've seen and heard, MJ pitched an amazing game for Bauxite, uh, you know, and did everything right to be able to go get that win. But definitely, I think that Sheridan could have been suffering from a little bit of hangover from the emotions and just laying it all on the field to try to get that win against Bryant.
Yeah, there's no question. You don't want to take anything away from Bauxite at all. What was it, 3-2? So just a one-run game. But Bauxite is one of those teams. That's certainly not someone that you want to see after a game like that. And that's another thing that Coach Hoffman, I didn't put it in the story, but he had mentioned that we got Bauxite in a couple of days, so we got to make sure. And I think I can't remember who it was that they beat, maybe El Dorado on Friday or something. But so they salvaged the week on Friday. But yeah, I mean, Bauxite is one of those teams that it really doesn't matter if you're 4, 5, 6A. They can get you at any time. They with their batting lineup, like you said, if MJ is really on. But I think too, I want to go back to what Coach Dreer said. I mean, this just is really what these Bryant teams, especially over the past couple of years, when you look at how they dug deep, and everyone pretty much, myself included. I know you were actually a lot more high on Bryant than I was last year. I was pretty much, it's Bentonville until they get knocked off. And Bryant proved the world wrong. I mean, they proved the state, the world, whatever you want to say. And that just the other night to me shows really just kind of what they have become, one of those teams. It doesn't matter if they're 5 runs down, 10 runs down, whatever it is, they always feel like they're in the game. And they showed that because they could have easily laid down. I didn't think that a team like that would lay down. But when you get a 5 spot put on you and somebody jumps on you like that and basically flips the batting order, that's real easy to lay down after something like that.
Oh, Bryant showed their resilience for sure. They showed that they have the talent and ability to win any game, whether they start out behind, start out ahead, or anything else. They've got great pitching. You look at Allie White and you look at Cadence Armstrong and a couple more there that, they just have amazing pitching, uh, strong bats, top to bottom, great defense. They're about as well coached team as you will see. I mean, you load up all that talent, you take all that ability, you take all the heart that are in those kids, and then you give them great coaching too, and it's a deadly combination, and the rest of the state is seeing that. I've been very impressed with Bryant for 2 straight years now, and until somebody proves otherwise, I think they're the best team in the state.
Yeah, pretty hard to argue. I know that was their 25th consecutive win against in-state competition. I think they played one more last week, so they're at like 26 wins straight, dating back to I think it's May 3rd of last year. So that win streak's almost gone on for a year. But another 5A team that I want to talk about, Arkansas High. Now this is another one talking about the Jared predictions. Dating back to 2 years ago when we started doing this. So this is our 3rd season. We started this in 2022. You had talked about this team being one to watch, and I know that you had gotten an early look on some of these kids, Macy Lee in particular. So last week, they defeated Lake Hamilton and Benton, both teams out of the 5A South, both teams that were in the Super 7. Of course, Benton still is, and then Lake Hamilton will be in the outside looking in this week. But Macy Lee, in those 2 games, she was what'd I do? I messed up here. Oh, I completely screwed it all up. So she struck out 15 batters, had a home run, and I believe it was 6 for 8 or 5 for 6. One of the 2. I deleted part of that, but I believe it was 5 for 6 that she went in those 2 games that I had, and then 6 RBI. I know the rest of that information is correct. So sorry for me completely just bloopering all that, but she went off. That whole team, Jared, I think it's time to buy into that hype because they are no longer a sleeper. They have really begun to show with those two games and really just what they've done all throughout this entire season. They are living up to what you had said to watch for 2 years ago.
Well, Arkansas High has a real argument for being possibly the best team in the state behind Sheridan in 5A. They may not be. They're right there with a couple other teams, but they're definitely not the team they were 2 years ago. I told you a couple of years ago, this team's coming on. Macy Lee is turning into a really amazing ball player. She started to get some help. The team has really started to come together. Really, you add pieces like Anaya Arnold, and Jayla Coleman, and the pieces have come together. You got great players in Jules Smart. This year they added Palin Nichols, and she is an amazing catcher. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to brag about her for a minute. I have seen highlight play after highlight play after highlight play of her doing great things behind the plate, diving and catching pop-up balls and popping up and throwing runners out and just crazy stuff. So when you really start to see all of the pieces that have come together with that team with Arkansas High, you take a great player like Macy Lee and you start giving her the pieces around her that she needs to succeed, and it's really come together for them this season. Taylor Pascarella has been just amazing on defense. She's really started to hit the ball well again. It's just up and down that lineup. There's great players, and it's starting to prove out. And Lake Hamilton and Benton got a little dose of it this week, and they're getting looking stronger and stronger as they go into the stretch here. So I won't bet against them. Sheridan to me is the best team in 5A without question, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit for Arkansas High to have a little bit of a reset from when they played them the first time, and Sheridan beat them very soundly the first time. But I would be willing to bet, knowing Macy Lee and those kids, they're going to make some adjustments and they're going to go compete with Sheridan when they go play them this week.
Yeah, I think that this is all the talk that we've had about the 5A South this year, that especially 1 through 3 seed. Now, depending on what Lake Hamilton team you get, that would be if the season were to end today, it would be them at the 4, I believe. But that's about as strong as it gets. But that 1 through 3 with Sheridan in no particular order, but it's looking like it's going to be Sheridan, Benton, and Arkansas High, or Sheridan, Arkansas High, and Benton, whatever order it is. That top 3 from the 5A South is just, I would not want. I think they're paired up against I can't remember if it's the Central or the East, but either way, I wouldn't want to see them.
Well, any of their 4. I mean, I'm being honest with you. Sheridan, Benton, Arkansas High, Lake Hamilton are all capable of beating anybody in the state on any given day. I mean, they are all very capable. Rexy Crane at Benton is just a phenomenal pitcher. She's a freshman, and as freshmen do, sometimes they'll have an off game here and there, but when she is on, she can play with anybody. Obviously, we know about all the talent at Sheridan and the pitching, Cooper Terry and Callie Kilborn and so many more down there. Just great talent in the circle at Sheridan. Lake Hamilton's got Reese Lackey and Michaela Miller that can play with anybody in the state. It's just everywhere you look. And, of course, we've already talked about Arkansas High and how much talent they have. Those top 4 in that conference, man, you got to hold them up against anybody in the state. If they're playing anyone other than each other, my money's on that whole side.
Because that's the thing. We can sit here and all day and debate about which conference is the best. I mean, I think that it's pretty proven that the South, at least as far as just strength of schedule and all that, is the most decorated. But you're not going to find a conference with the kind of consistency. I know that we really like what we saw or what we have seen from Maumelle in the Central. You love what you've seen from Greenwood in the West. I know Greenbrier's done some good things. And I tell you, if also BB, I don't want to forget about them in the Central. But if Valley View, if they can find some offense soon, there's no telling what that team can do. But when you just talk about 1 through 4, or even 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to look at it as, it's just not close to me. And does that mean that we're not going to have some surprises in the state tournament? That doesn't mean that. But from what we have seen this year, yeah, to me, it's just not close. So yeah, I mean, they pretty much just flex their muscle. But before we head down to 4A, I want to remind you guys real quick of our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. A properly graded infield is not only important for player safety, but also a field's health. No company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield reservation, I messed it up again. It's the first day reading the ad read, guys. Forgive me. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation, and check them out on Facebook to see what they have to offer by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. Okay, so we got a little bit of the stutters out this week, and then next week we will make sure that is crisp as can be. But going down to 4A. Yeah. Hey, it's been a while. I did some ad reads during football season, like during our game of the week, but man, it's been a while. I think it's been 3 years since I've done one on a podcast. So, no, because, SB Live had done the previous one. So that was our ad, and that was all we had to say. So it's definitely new to me again. But it's like riding a bike. You just got to get it down, but get in the groove a little bit. So we'll stay in the Texarkana, the Southwest Arkansas region. And I'm going to give a shout out to the Ashdown Lady Panthers. Jared, we've heard a lot from the Ashdown faithful, and most of what I've heard has been nice. It's just kind of some friendly, jabs here and there. Like, when are y'all going to give us some love and attention? I'm like, look, you guys decide that. We need you to get that statement win. They got that statement win over Malvern, 5-1. And I look at this team, especially over the past couple of years. They've been one that have really heated up in the back end. Now, that 2022 team had a little bit – it was more so of a slump than they were inconsistent, and they just really got going at the end. Last year, I know this was a team I think they got back to the quarterfinals, but that was in Class 4A when they bumped up. So who knows? A win like this against, you think about what Malvern has done to all of those teams in 4A7, I guess minus the second Nashville game that they lost. This is big time because, again, right now with how close you are with them, they don't have a regional tournament or a district tournament in 4A7, but this is the right time if you're going to turn it around, because there's just – with Ashdown, you just haven't seen it as far as the teams when they've or that they played that have been better than some of the other ones that they've gone up against. They just hasn't gone well, but this time it finally did, and maybe at the right time.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on Ashdown, and early their strength of schedule wasn't really impressive. The only couple of good teams they played, they had lost to, and so it was kind of hard to really judge where Ashdown was as a team. And then they won a couple of games they should have won, but they won them very solidly. And so I was kind of questioning, like, where are they? Where are they? Well, they kind of showed up as the Ashdown of old in that Malvern game, and so they may be turning that corner and really getting ready to go. They have a solid program. They've been good for years, 3-4 years here. So sometimes it's just getting all of the parts clicking, ironing out some stuff. I'll tell you the one thing that you have got to take into consideration too with any team, and it may not have anything to do with Ashdown, but we're talking about teenage girls that are playing a game here, and so there's always a little bit of drama, there's always a little bit of chemistry stuff, and sometimes it takes till mid-season or late season for the girls to kind of work out their pecking order and get their things lined out and be ready to go play team softball. And I've seen it with a lot of different teams. I've seen it in travel ball. I've seen it with different high school teams. I've heard coaches talk about it and parents talk about it. And when teams get lined out and get going, and that may not have anything to do with where Ashdown's at right now, I'm just bringing that up as a possible thing, is, some of these teams that haven't played great early in the year and then all of a sudden they are, sometimes they just got to let the girls work it out between them and decide it's time to go play softball and be serious about it. And that's a lot of times you see teams really get on a roll late in the year. They just found the chemistry. They found the way to let it click and go.
Well, speaking of a team that's really began to click and go is Nashville, staying in that same conference. Won 12 of their last 13. And this is why I'm always so patient with Nashville every year. Now, they lost, what was it, 7, 8 seniors off of that 2022 state runner-up team. And last year were competitive. They were the only 4A team that really, or well, I'm not going to say they're the only 4A team that competed with Gravett last year, but they were at least in the state tournament. So I just every year, and this is kind of one where I do base some of my I guess my belief in them is the history, just what Boomer Brown has done over all these years. And this is also another team that, especially when they start the year young, and they also don't have Landon Tompkins right now. She's out until at least regional, so probably going to be another week at minimum. So that's I'm not going to say your best player. I don't know that for sure, but I know probably your best hitter. No question about that. So Nashville's done all this without her. Nancy Worthington's done an admirable job in the circle, really, for the past couple of years. It's not easy taking over for Macy McJunkins. So 4A7, it's about as deep as it is every single year. When you think about, of course, Ashdown could possibly be heating up, and then Malvern, if they continue to find their groove. I know that they hit that slump against Ashdown, but overall this season they've looked pretty good.
Well, I've been talking about Malvern quite a bit for the last 2 years, and I think Malvern for sure is always going to be in that conversation. Nashville has always been in that conversation. They kind of fell off a little bit early this year, trying to figure it out. They've been without Landon Tompkins, but it seems like they're finding a groove. And if they get her back and they're finding a groove, they're going to be really dangerous because she is a phenomenal player. And you add her back into something that's already working pretty well, it's going to get interesting in a hurry. Ashdown seems to be finding their way, and so definitely another deep conference that is kind of starting to all get rolling in the right direction at the same time. So we'll see what happens with them. It'll be interesting to watch down the stretch.
And then down in 3A, want to talk about Mayflower Eagles real quick. We did a big segment on them last week. They did get that win over Atkins, who was top ranked in the state. I think that actually happened maybe last year too, where Atkins may have been 1 or 2 and Mayflower was in that 3 range, and then they ended up winning the regular season matchup. But Lady Eagles last week, when we talked about them, they had won 12, 13 straight. They come into this week at 16 straight. So they take over that top spot in the Super 7. And, I looking at the regular season, and we've mentioned this a couple of times really in the past couple of weeks, I don't know that 3A is quite as deep than it typically is. Mayflower, Hackett, Atkins, Boonville, those typical ones. And also, too, you can't forget about Lincoln when you've got Brinkley Morton in the circle. Harding Academy, we like them. And then we'll talk about another team in particular just in a moment here. But just looking at that 3A5, again, when you consider Lamar, as we get into district here, that's one that I want to remind everybody to watch, is that district there, that Region 5, because right now it is Atkins and Mayflower, I guess, that have the automatic bids in right now. But you would imagine that the regional bids are going to be those two, along with Lamar and possibly Baptist Prep, if they are to turn around. I know that Baptist Prep's been a little bit hot and cold, literally like about around a 500 record right now. So at 3A5, we're talking about the strength of conferences just about in every single classification. I think we have, Jared. That's one, again, that I think they're going to really try to flex their muscle, of course, against each other this week in districts, but then when you get to regionals next week.
Yeah, I really have always been impressed with Atkins. They've got a great program, and they're consistently good. Never going to bet against Libby May or any of those girls at Atkins. But I'm going to tell you, Mayflower, who looked a little bit kind of off or sluggish the first few games of the year, has just started looking like a machine here in the last week or two. Really played good ball. They're hitting the ball well. They're pitching the ball well. Just all parts of the game are working for Mayflower right now. And, got a big win, against Atkins. just done a lot of things that have been impressive over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And uh, if they continue to play the way that they played the last 2 to 3 weeks, Mayflower is going to be really tough and really hard to deal with. Um, Lamar for sure is one of those teams that, man, you can never tell where they are. Like one week they'll go beat two teams that, like, holy cow, they're one of the best teams in the state, and then the next week they'll lose to somebody, and you're like, what happened to them? And then they'll go beat somebody again, then they'll lose. It's hard to get a gauge on Lamar, but with as far as just their ability and their talent, Lamar can play with anybody in the state. You know, the Harden girl. Uh, you know, I'm going brain dead now. Wicker. And,
you talking about Harley Wicker?
Harley Wicker.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always go brain dead on her first name. And I've known her forever. She's picked up with me, played with me, but it's just one of those that never just pops in my head when I want to think of it. You know, she's a tremendous talent. Just crazy speed, ability to get on base, quick hands, quick feet. Just she can run you on the bases. Just a great player. And you know, just a lot of talent there, a lot of ability, and it'd be interesting to see what they do, you know, in this district tournament, because they're capable of beating anybody, including those top 2 or 3 teams. And they've proven that a couple of times now over the last few years that they've beat some really big names. So definitely going to be interesting to see what they do in their district tournament, and then what they do as they get into regionals and state.
Another one that I've been watching for a long time, and I know you have as well, when Scott Hoffman from Sheridan called me on March 2nd, whenever it was, sometime in early March, he told me, you better watch out for DeWitt. They played them, and I think they were actually beating Sheridan, and then Sheridan scored a few runs and they got the win. But the DeWitt Dragonettes, Jared, they have been on a roll, 15 consecutive wins going into this week. They started 0-2, so they've won 15 since, I believe it was, but they lost to Star City, and they lost that game to Sheridan. That was again their opening losses, or I guess it was, if I'm not mistaken, I guess it is 17 straight. I was thinking it was 15, but somewhere in that range. But freshman Harley Grammer, she's batting around 600. Got 5 home runs on the year, 26 RBI. Obviously, we already know about AC Cox, the junior that's committed to Southern Miss. They've got 3 others that are batting over 400. So they're batting really well. They're pitching pretty well, too. Now, we may not know exactly what they have from a standpoint of that they haven't played what Atkins has had, or maybe, excuse me, what Hackett has. And just kind of going back to the strength of schedule here for a second, because you know, they haven't seen anything since like a Sheridan or a Star City, probably since that time. But again, going back to the consistency part of it, and then you got the leadership of AC Cox with that right there at the leadoff, that's been starting since her freshman year, been a heavy contributor. And then also, too, the amount of sophomores and freshmen that have really grown up quickly. Though some of these sophomores, they contributed last year as freshmen, so they are far from being the underclassmen somebody that just came around. So these Dragonettes, Jared, let's not forget about Arkansas County here. I think they can make some noise here and maybe hurt some feelings along the way. I know that we talked about the West teams, some of the Central teams, and rightfully so, but these Dragonettes out of Southeast Arkansas have really been making some noise.
Well, I started hearing quite a bit about DeWitt 2 to 3 weeks ago. Started seeing little things pop up in my feeds in social media, like they had a great game here, this one had a great game there, and I was like, man, where did they come from? And over the last 2 weeks, of course, I've heard you mention them a couple of times here lately, you know, off the air. I've heard several others mention them, but especially in the last week, you know, with all the softball people that live in my news feed on social media, I've seen DeWitt just pop up over and over and over and over, and it's like, man, they're making noise. You know, they're really starting to show that they've got some ability and that they can play. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do as they get into the tournament here and they start matching up with some of the big dogs. But honestly, looking at what they're doing right now, they have a real chance to make noise. They have a chance to go deep and possibly even, like you said, they're going to hurt some feelings. They're going to beat some people that nobody's expecting because not a lot of people are super familiar with them, and they've got a lot of talent in that roster.
And the crazy thing is, the best could be in front of them as far as next year, because next year's, and I'm not trying to get too far ahead, but you still got AC Cox, and you've got these 26s and 27s that have been able to develop the way that they have over these years. So it could be scary down there for a while down there in Southeast Arkansas. There's no question. And of course, Coach Milholland had said that there's about 7 to 8 that he could list. So, yeah, I think that's definitely one that we might tend to forget about just because, again, we don't see them a lot up here. But that's always been a scrappy team over the past few years. And it seems like that things have really began to pick up for them this year. Again, just look at the consistency. Look at how much they have won. So down to 3A, Riverside. That's the one that I probably got the most
2A.
Questions about. Did I say 3A?
Yeah, you said 3.
My bad. Hey, yeah, I'm good for at least 3 mistakes a pod. Why not? But down to 2A, Riverside lost its first game 13-0. Now, look, it was Greene County Tech, 5A school. That's one of those that can be. I know they've had some that, maybe didn't expect, but that's a team that can beat anybody on any given day. I think that's been proven. But again, also it's 5A over 2, a quality 5A over number 1 Riverside. So, Jared, this one, and I wanted to bring this up earlier, but we did have a lot of upsets, and I talked about it at the top of the show, or at least I touched on it. But this is that time of year, and I'm by no means making excuses for anybody. I'm not just pointing this out because it's Riverside. I'm talking about across the board. And I know that y'all, and we'll talk about the game with CAC here in a second, y'all experienced an upset earlier this week. Things happen. Like you said, these are teenage kids. I know in today's world, it's like we expect everybody to go undefeated and this and that. But this is a season full of proms. This is a season full of, I think there's ACTs or ACT preps. There is graduations. There is all kinds of stuff going on right now. Now, that being said, you can't use that excuse forever. Now, I think you can use that excuse for about a game or two. So you kind of let it slide once you get into like the late April times. But, I think that you look at you guys' game with CAC. CAC, it was scoreless through 3. They scored 4 runs. I think it was in the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. Then they ran away with a 10-0 or 10-1 win. And then Riverside got blanked by GCT 13-0. It just happens. Kayla Myers against y'all, she pitched a really good game. You had 3 kids that had 3 hits. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't go your way.
Well, I'm just going to tell you straight up. I'm not going to take anything away from the CAC kids because those kids came ready to played great softball, and we did not at all. I'll just say that we did not play good ball. Definitely by far our worst game of the year. So yes, definitely there's all kinds of things that can go into it. And I do think there's a few underlying things that contributed to some stuff there. But absolutely, like CAC came to play. They were prepared. They were ready. They've got another thing for CAC that needs to be mentioned too, because there's a lot of people that are wondering what's going on with them this year. Well, for one thing, they lost a Division I pitcher from last year in Brooklyn White, and people were wondering why they haven't won more games and stuff. Well, that's a big tough thing to replace, and when you lose a great pitcher like that, and Kayla Myers has done a phenomenal job. I can't say enough about how talented that kid is. She's one of the best hitters I've seen anywhere, one of the best contact hitters. We got her and Ella Blakely on strikeouts in the first inning and really looked solid early. And I thought, well, okay, well, both of those girls made great adjustments. They both hit home runs after that. They're just super talented. And CAC played great ball top to bottom throughout their lineup. They put the bat on the ball. We didn't come ready to play. Really, I think we were a little off mentally. I think we didn't play the game that we should have played physically. We made a lot of mistakes and we didn't hit. And so nothing but props to CAC. and they have not even had their whole team this year. At times, they've been missing some kids here and there. Well, they got all their kids back, and they're showing up a little bit like the CAC of old too. And they're a team that could put things together for a run down here through the stretch. I hope not. I hope that we're able to derail that a little bit, but you never know. But going back to the Riverside game, uh, just really impressed with Riverside all year long, and you can't take anything away from them because they lost the game to Greene County Tech, even if it was a 13-0 run rule, because it's just two different levels of play when you talk about 2A to 5A, and you never know when it was a game just like we've seen some of these others have. They take a big run rule loss to somebody and then turn right back around and they have a great reset and they just hammer somebody. We turned around the next night after taking a nasty loss to CEC and played just exceptional softball. And it was a lot different opponent for sure. But, we threw a perfect game. We hit the ball really well. We played great defense. Like it just completely different teams from one night to the next. And so you just from night to night, day to day, it's just you can never tell what's going to happen, especially when it comes to high school softball. And you're going to see that. You're going to see teams that lose one day turn around and win a great game the next day. It's all in their ability to reset and have that mental focus to be able to put yesterday away and go play the next day.
And last but not least, in Class 1A, I do want to point out we previewed the 1 versus 3 matchup, Taylor versus Bradley. Taylor did get the regular season sweep over their rival Bradley. So last year they split that 1-1. So now the question is, you got to think that Bradley will face off against Taylor and they'll get another chance to get them, or will Taylor continue their winning streak, or will they be able, the Lady Bears, will they be able to dig in and get one from them? But we always talk about the 1A2, and we haven't in a while. We've tried to touch on some other topics because we do discuss it a ton. But this week it's kind of impossible not to in district week. Now, that district tournament starts on Tuesday. I know that various ones start kind of depending on how many teams are playing in each conference. You got some, I think, that are starting Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even some that are starting Friday. But this one is going to be Tuesday, and it's going to be Norfolk and Rural Special that will start that off. But in that district tournament, you've got Westside Greers Ferry that is number 5 seed. And this is where this conference always gets really interesting, Jared. And that's why I always say the madness of the 1A2, because so you got Concord 1, Shirley 2, Viola 3, Calico Rock, who's slipped as of late, at number 4, and then Westside the 5. So out of those 5 teams, one will not make the regional tournament, which is crazy to think about. So I guess Concord and Shirley, Concord through Calico Rock have the automatic because they're the 4 seeds. But Westside is kind of looking like, are they going to, or I'm sorry, they're not the automatic. Concord and Shirley are, but Westside is trying to get that spot in the state tournament or the regional tournament. So that's going to be the really interesting one for me, is because when you get to this conference in particular, it's so incredibly loaded. So that's going to be one thing that I'm watching for. Westside is a really great team. They were a really great team in 2022. They slipped off last year when you lose, we're talking about pitching and CAC, what they lost. When you lose McKenna Biddle like they did in 2022, that was massive. And that's what they've kind of struggled. Now, they've had some, Eden Murphy, I know, as a freshman, has done a good job for them. And then, of course, Lacey Baker, is a natural outfielder, has played. But that's going to be the interesting one for me, I think, is to see what Westside can do in this district tournament, if they can really heat up. We've talked about a few different ones heating up at the end. Can they do that?
Yeah, I don't know the exact matchups. Is it Westside and
they have the
Calico Rock, I think. Are they in that first matchup for them?
So the first one I think is going to be Norfolk and Rural Special. I've got it somewhere here. I'm trying to stall. Let's see. Okay. So 4 p.m. on, I guess that's Tuesday, because it was initially scheduled for Wednesday. 4 p.m. you got Rural and Norfolk, and then 5:30 you've got West Side and Calico Rock, and then at 7 o'clock you've got Viola, and then the winner of Rural and Norfolk.
Okay.
So that's the last. So you got 3 games.
The Calico Rock and West Side is going to be a big determining factor right there for who gets into the regional.
Yeah.
And those two have both proven that they can play with anybody when they're on, and they can get beat by some teams when they're not on. And of course, that's the case for a lot of teams in high school softball. But really, it's going to come down to which team shows up ready to play that day with those two to get their name etched up there to get into that semifinal, into the final. But I've been very impressed with Viola and with Concord, and a little bit with Shirley too. I haven't got to see as much out of Shirley. I've gotten a little more stats and a little bit of more information on Concord and Viola from different parents and players and different things. And Shirley's definitely been in that conversation, but I just haven't gotten as much information on them. I kind of like those 3, but then who's going to end up being that 4th seed to get in there? And I really don't know. I don't know that I would make a prediction. I feel like on recent play, I kind of like Westside. So it'll be interesting to see who comes ready and focused and is going to find a way to get it done come Tuesday.
One of the pretty much main topics of this show tonight has basically been who's playing the best softball right now. And between those 2 teams, Calico Rock was playing really good early. They actually really surprised. Now, I don't know if they have some injury. I got left on red from their coach a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about their team, but I don't know if it's injuries or what's going on. But they're not playing quite up to par. I don't think that Westside is right. Even in Westside's had some close losses, and Calico Rock has had some close losses too. I mean, shoot, they had one of the top games in Class 1A in terms of if you like home run or I always say home run derbies with the high scoring games. It doesn't necessarily mean home run derby. If you like high scoring games, that's 17-15 against Viola. That was one that you would have loved for sure because, I mean, just runs and runs galore, hits and hits galore. But right now, I think Westside is playing a little bit better. So that's probably the main one. I looked I was going through my brackets, and it's really next week that you get into it. Like, okay, like some bit. Now, I'm not saying there's not going to be any big upsets. I mean, you look at the basketball side, Paris was a 6 seed. The Paris girls, they were a 6 seed in their district tournament. And then they ran the table and then made it to regionals. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but then I was looking at matchups and I'm like, this team is like a 5 or 6. They just really didn't hang with the upper echelon teams. It's not the case with this one. Westside as a 5 seed can certainly do some damage. I think maybe last year or the year before there was a 5 seed out of this conference that ended up making it to the championship round. So you just never know what could happen. But if you like what you heard on this show on episode 5 of Arkansas Preps Weekly, you can check us out on YouTube. That's more than likely where many of you are watching now. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button so that way you know when we release a new episode. But also you can check us out on Apple, Spotify, all of the audio podcast forums. Wherever you listen, we are there. And Jared, I'm going to close this out unless you got anything else to add.
I got 3 quick ones that I'm going to throw in there that we didn't talk about tonight. Monticello is playing really well. They're absolutely smashing the cover off the ball and hitting a ton of home runs down there. Mina has started to really find their groove, and they're taking off and won, I want to say, like 10 of their last 12 or something like that. So they're looking strong again, kind of finding their spot. And I'll tell you a team in 2A that we haven't mentioned, but they deserve mention, especially the way that their pitcher is throwing right now, and that's Desark. Desark has really kind of turned the corner and are looking really good again. And Kaylee McDonald is looking like she needs to be in the conversation for one of the top pitchers in the state this year. She has really been phenomenal down this stretch. So definitely want to get their names in there for just a minute and just talk about some of the things that they're doing here lately. But we'll get into them a whole lot more as we get into tournaments this week and when we get to the next podcast. But I didn't want to leave them out because they've really looked strong here lately.
Yeah, that's a great point about Kaylee McDonald. I know we had touched on her last week and one other time, but we posted on the Facebook page. I got some stats from her dad, also coach. I think he's assistant, if I'm not mistaken, but she had 19 strikeouts against Hazen last Friday, and then it's probably going to go over 400 this week. She's pitched 93.2 innings on the year, 237 strikeouts, .82 ERA, and then a point. And our 128 batting average against, and then she's batting .449, has 3 triples and then 4 home runs. So not a bad season for your sophomore year, especially. So, but again, guys, thank you all for all the support. Hit us up, APW, Arkansas Preps Weekly, at naturalstatesports.com for any kind of advertising opportunities. As we said, we've signed 2 last week, and that's the thing too. It doesn't have to be for a year or 6 months. TeamFunded, which I need to bring them up. I'm glad I didn't forget. TeamFunded is one that is just going to sponsor as of right now. We hope that it's going to be a longer term, but for right now, they're going to sponsor the remainder of the Super 7 rankings. So this is not exclusive to every single month. If you want to do 3, we can work with you. There's all kinds of things that we can work with you on. Would love to talk to you about that. But also too, want to tell you about TeamFunded. That is the other sponsor that we signed that you will see all over our Super 7 rankings for the remainder of the year. Just head to teamfunded.com. It's literally an app in your hand. It's run for coaches, by coaches, or I guess it's run by coaches for coaches. So these are guys that work for the company that understand any kind of issues that you might have. And it's right there in the palm of your hand. So why not make your life easier? You've already got enough going on with coaching, with teaching, taking care of your own family. Why not have it right there in the palm of your hands? Go check out teamfunded.com. They are what our friends can do for you over there. But that will do it for episode 5 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Thank you guys so much for listening, for all the support. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For Jared, Hawthorn, and all of us here at Natural State Sports, I want to thank you for listening. We will see you next week.